This is our last lecture on CRUD using the Java driver, and I'm going to introduce you to one more technique that you can use with MongoDB, which we actually haven't seen yet, even in the shell, and it's called find and modify. Find and modify provides an interesting capability which allows you to, in one atomic operation, find a document, modify it, and return it. Again, all atomically. So to motivate the discussion around find and modify, I'll give you an example of a service that you could develop easily with find and modify. So it's a service that provides unique ranges of numbers for a given ID. So it allows you to specify an ID for a counter. I chose ABC to use here. And the function basically takes a counter ID, the number of numbers needed, so the range, the size of the range that I need, and then the collection to store the counters in. The method returns the first number in the range, and it's guaranteeing that the caller of this method has unique access, essentially, or it will be the only one given the numbers from first up to num needed minus 1. And I do this 3 times with the same counter ID, ABC. I ask for 2 numbers, then 3 and 10, then I print out the range for each one. So the first time it should print out range 1 to 2, and then 3 to 5, and then 6 to 15. I haven't actually written the function yet, so I'm going to do that now. So let's see how we can write getRange using find and modify. So find and modify returns a document, which I'll call doc, and I'll say collection.find and modify. And there's a lot of arguments to find and modify for this particular use case. But the first argument is always a query. And I'm querying for a document with the ID that's passed in. The second argument is the fields I want back. I'm just going to pass in null for fields because I don't care about getting all the fields back in this case. The third argument is sort criteria, which we're not going to use here. So I'm just going to say null for sort as well. The fourth argument is whether the document should be removed after it's modified. So I'm going to say false because I need to maintain the value of my counter. But there are use cases where remove is important, but not this one. The next argument is the actual update that I want to do, the modification I want to make to this document. So what do I actually want to do here? So every document needs to maintain the current value of the counter. So what I'm going to say here is I want to increment the value of the counter field by what? I want to increment it by range. So based on how large a range the user's requested. And the last 2 parameters are return new and upsert. So find and modify lets you decide whether you want to get the contents of the document either before or after the modification that you perform through find and modify. In this case I want the value after, because I'm also going to say true for upsert, because if the counter doesn't already exist, I want to create it. So if I said false for return new, the first time I called this method on a particular ID, I'd get back null, and I don't want to deal with nulls, so I'm just going to say true here. Oops, close that already. And then I need to return the value of the counter. So I'm going to return doc.get counter. I'm going to cast that to an integer. But if I do that, then I'm going to get the value of the counter after the range, and I want the value before the range. So I'm going to return counter minus range plus 1, just to account for the off by 1 error from the subtraction. So if I run this, I get back what I'd expect. First time I call the method, again with counter ID of ABC, I need 2, so my range is from 1 to 2. The second time I call it from 3, so I get 3 back, so it's 3 to 5. And the third time I want 10 numbers back, so I get 6 to 15. And at the end I print out the value of the collection. You can see that there's a single document in the collection whose ID is ABC, as we'd expect, and the counter now is 15. Okay? And that's it with find and modify. As you can see from the number of parameters, there's a lot of permutations of those parameters that will let you achieve different effects. But this is just to give you a flavor of the kind of things you can achieve with find and modify.